The alien mother's plea. The rain fell like liquid silver over the sprawling megacity of Nexus Prime, its neon-lit streets pulsating with life. High above the chaos, Logan Kane sat in his dimly lit office, staring out the window as drops slid down the reinforced glass. The flickering light of a neon sign outside painted his face in hues of blue and pink, accentuating the weariness etched into his features. A former military investigator turned private eye, Logan had seen his share of bizarre cases, but tonight felt different, even before she walked in. A sharp knock shattered the quiet. Logan turned, adjusting his coat and brushing the dust off his cluttered desk. "Come in," he called, his voice steady but curious. The door slid open, revealing a figure bathed in the harsh fluorescent light of the hallway. She stepped inside, her movements deliberate but hesitant. Her skin was an iridescent green, shimmering faintly in the dim room. Long silver hair framed her delicate, angular face, and her eyes, deep, luminous amber, were filled with a raw intensity that sent a chill down Logan's spine. "I need your help," she said, her voice trembling but firm. Logan leaned back, studying her. "People don't usually come here unless they're desperate. What's the problem?" She hesitated, then stepped closer, her hands clutching a small holographic pendant. Activating it, she projected the image of a young girl with similar green skin and vibrant purple eyes. The girl smiled brightly in the hologram, holding a tiny glowing crystal. "My daughter, Elara," the woman said, her voice breaking. "She's missing." Logan frowned. "Missing how? Abduction? Runaway?" 3 days ago, she didn't come home from school, the woman said, tears forming in her amber eyes. "I went to the authorities, but they've done nothing. They see us as expendable." Logan sighed, his expression hardening. The reputation of Nexus Prime's authorities wasn't stellar, especially when it came to non-human citizens. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lyra," she replied, gripping the edge of his desk. "I'm willing to pay whatever it takes. Please, Mr. Kane, she's all I have." Logan stared at her for a long moment. He could see the desperation in her eyes, but there was something more, fear. The kind of fear that didn't just come from losing a loved one. "Why me, Lyra?" he asked. "You're human," she said simply. "They respect your kind. They might listen to you." Logan snorted, leaning forward. "Respect might be stretching it. But fine. Tell me everything, where she was last seen, her habits, any enemies." Lyra nodded quickly, pulling out a data pad and scrolling through frantic notes. "She's a student at Nexus Academy for Advanced Studies. She's brilliant, genetics, biotechnology, she's always been ahead of her peers. The last time I saw her was the morning she left for school. She takes the tram with her friend, a human named Leora. I've tried contacting Leora's family, but they won't speak to me." Logan listened carefully, jotting notes in his old-fashioned notebook. "Does Elara have a history of running off? Trouble with anyone at school?" Lyra shook her head vehemently. "Never. She's disciplined, kind, and focused. She wouldn't just disappear." Before Logan could respond, a sudden crash outside his window made them both jump. He moved quickly, drawing a small energy pistol from his desk. Peering through the rain-streaked glass, he saw nothing unusual, just the endless glow of the city. But something felt off. Turning back to Lyra, he saw her trembling slightly, her hands clutching her pendant like a lifeline. "Stay here," he said, moving to the door. "Lock it behind me." "No," she said sharply, stepping forward. "If they found me, we're both in danger." Logan hesitated, then nodded. "All right, then you follow me." They exited his office, Logan leading the way with his weapon drawn. The hallway was empty, but a faint buzzing sound echoed from the stairwell. He gestured for Lyra to stay close as they crept toward the noise. When they reached the stairwell, Logan's instincts kicked in. He motioned for Lyra to stay back, then swung the door open. A small, insect-like drone zipped through the air, scanning the space with a red laser. Logan fired once, his shot precise. The drone sparked and fell to the ground. Lyra gasped. "They're tracking me." Logan knelt by the broken drone, inspecting its markings. A faint logo on the side made his stomach drop, a symbol tied to a powerful corporation known for its genetic research. "Who did you say your daughter's friends were?" he asked, his voice tight. "Just Leora," Lyra whispered. "Why?" "Because this isn't random," Logan said, standing. "Someone's watching you, and they don't want me involved." They hurried back to his office, Logan locking the door behind them. Lyra looked pale, her luminous skin dimming with stress. "What now?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Now," Logan said, pulling up a map of Nexus Prime on his terminal, "we start with the Academy. If this is connected to Illyra's research or abilities, we'll find answers there." As the map glowed on the screen, Logan felt the weight of the case settle on his shoulders. Something told him this wasn't just about one missing girl. It was bigger, much bigger, and they were running out of time. The Academy's dark secrets. The skies above Nexus Prime were a roiling blend of acid rain and neon lights as Logan and Lyra stood outside the Nexus Academy for advanced studies. The towering structure was an architectural marvel, its gleaming surface reflecting the city's chaotic energy. Yet, beneath its polished exterior, Logan felt the weight of something ominous. "Are you sure about this?" Lyra asked, her voice low but resolute. Logan adjusted his coat and glanced at her. "We start here. If Illyra disappeared after leaving this place, someone here knows why." They entered the Academy's main hall, a vast space filled with holographic displays showcasing the school's achievements. Students in sleek uniforms moved with purpose, their chatter echoing in the grand corridors. Lyra's presence drew a few curious glances, but Logan's stoic demeanor kept most eyes averted. "Where do we start?" Lyra whispered. Logan nodded toward the security desk. A bored-looking guard sat behind the counter, his fingers tapping lazily on a holographic interface. "Wait here," Logan said, stepping forward. The guard barely looked up as Logan approached. "Can I help you?" "Logan Kane, private investigator," Logan said, flashing a badge that looked official enough to fool most people. "I need access to your security footage from 3 days ago." The guard raised an eyebrow. "And why would I do that?" "Because," Logan said, leaning closer, "a student is missing, and if I find out this academy is obstructing the investigation, your name will be the first one on the report." The guard hesitated, glancing at Logan's badge again before sighing. "Fine. Follow me." As Logan disappeared with the guard, Lyra wandered the hall, her eyes scanning the walls adorned with pictures of star students and their achievements. Her breath caught when she spotted Illyra's smiling face in one of the displays. Below it, the caption read, "Illyra Lyric, Biogenetics Prodigy." "She really stood out, didn't she?" a voice said behind her. Lyra spun around to face a young woman with striking blue eyes and auburn hair tied into a neat braid. The woman wore a staff badge that identified her as Dr. Illyra Voss. "Who are you?" Lyra asked, her tone wary. "Dr. Voss," the woman said with a warm smile. "I teach advanced genetics here. You must be Illyra's mother." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. "How did you know?" "She spoke of you often," Voss said, stepping closer. "She's a remarkable young woman. Her disappearance is troubling. Do you know anything?" Lyra asked, hope flickering in her voice. Voss hesitated, glancing around. "Not here. Meet me in Lab 7C in an hour. I'll tell you what I can." Before Lyra could respond, Voss disappeared into the crowd, leaving her more anxious than ever. Logan returned a few minutes later, his expression grim. "The footage is gone." Conveniently deleted for the exact time frame we need. Figures, Lyra muttered. But I might have a lead. She recounted her encounter with Dr. Voss. Logan frowned. Could be genuine, or it could be a trap. Either way, we need to check it out. An hour later, they found themselves outside Lab 7C. Logan scanned the area, his instincts on high alert. The corridor was eerily quiet, the hum of the Academy's systems the only sound. Inside, Dr. Voss was waiting, her expression tense. She motioned for them to close the door. "What I'm about to tell you could cost me my job," she began, her voice low. Illyra wasn't just a student here. She was part of a special program. One designed to nurture extraordinary talents in biogenetics. Special program? Logan asked, narrowing his eyes. Voss nodded. It's funded by private interests, corporations looking to exploit young prodigies. Illyra's work attracted attention, especially after she developed a method to synthesize genetic material in ways previously thought impossible. 3 days ago, she told me she was scared. She thought someone was following her. Lyra's hands clenched into fists. "Why didn't you do anything?" "I tried," Voss said, her voice cracking. "But the Academy's board is complicit. They silenced me and erased the records." "Who's funding this program?" Logan pressed. "I don't know exactly," Voss admitted. "But I've heard whispers, mention of a group called GeneCorp. They're notorious for their black market dealings in genetic research." Logan exchanged a glance with Lyra. The pieces were falling into place, but the picture was far darker than they'd anticipated. Before they could ask more, the lab's door suddenly slid open. A group of men in black tactical gear stormed in, their weapons trained on the trio. "Hands up," the leader barked. Logan reacted instantly, shoving Lyra behind a lab table while drawing his concealed sidearm. The room erupted into chaos as energy bolts scorched the walls. Lyra ducked low, her heart pounding as Logan fired with calculated precision. Voss screamed, diving for cover as the intruders advanced. Logan grabbed a chemical beaker from the table and hurled it at the nearest attacker. The glass shattered, releasing a thick cloud of smoke. "Move!" Logan shouted, grabbing Lyra's arm and pulling her toward the emergency exit. As they fled through the winding corridors, alarms blared, and their pursuers' footsteps echoed behind them. Logan led them to a maintenance hatch, wrenching it open and gesturing for Lyra to climb inside. "This leads to the sublevels," he said. "We'll lose them down there." Lyra hesitated, glancing back. "What about Dr. Voss?" "She made her choice," Logan said grimly. "We can't save everyone." With a heavy heart, Lyra followed him into the hatch, the metal ladder cold against her hands. As they descended into the dimly lit sublevels, the reality of their situation hit her like a tidal wave. This wasn't just about finding Illyra anymore. They were up against a powerful force that would stop at nothing to keep their secrets buried. "Logan," she whispered, her voice shaking. "What if we're too late?" He paused, looking back at her with a determination that burned brighter than the neon lights above. "We're not. And we won't be." Beneath the shadows of Nexus Prime. The sublevels of Nexus Prime stretched like a labyrinth beneath the city, a network of forgotten tunnels and maintenance shafts buried under centuries of construction. The air was thick with dampness and the faint hum of machinery. Logan's flashlight flickered as he led Lyra deeper into the darkness, his steps careful but purposeful. Lyra's voice broke the tense silence. "Do you even know where we're going?" "Enough to stay ahead of them," Logan replied, glancing back at her. "This isn't my first time sneaking around Nexus's underbelly." The truth was, the sublevels unnerved even him. They were a breeding ground for the city's worst elements, smugglers, scavengers, and the occasional rogue AI. Logan couldn't shake the feeling that something more sinister lurked in the shadows, watching their every move. The whisper of danger. Stop, Logan whispered, holding up a hand. Lyra froze, her sharp hearing catching it too, the faint scrape of metal against stone, far too deliberate to be natural. Her breath quickened as Logan motioned for her to stay low. In the dim light, figures emerged from a side corridor, their silhouettes distorted by the flickering overhead lamps. These weren't the black-clad mercenaries from the lab, their armor was patched together, their weapons mismatched but deadly. Scavengers. Fresh meat, one of them sneered, his voice echoing eerily. Stay quiet and follow my lead, Logan murmured, his hand brushing against his concealed knife. The scavengers advanced, their steps slow and taunting. Logan stepped forward, his posture relaxed but his eyes cold. You don't want to do this, he said, his voice low and firm. The leader, a hulking man with cybernetic implants, laughed. Oh, I think we do. Pretty little alien and a washed-up human. You'll fetch a good price. Lyra stiffened, but Logan's calm demeanor didn't waver. Walk away now, and you'll live to regret it. Push this, and you'll regret not walking away. The scavenger leader growled, raising his weapon. But before he could fire, Logan moved like lightning, his knife slicing through the wires of the man's cybernetic arm. Sparks flew as the weapon clattered to the ground. Chaos erupted. The fight in the shadows. Logan ducked a wild swing from another scavenger, countering with a quick jab to the ribs that sent his attacker sprawling. Lyra, pressed against the wall, watched in stunned silence as Logan fought with a precision that bordered on ruthless efficiency. When a scavenger lunged at her, Lyra reacted instinctively, grabbing a rusted pipe from the ground. She swung it with all her strength, the clang echoing through the tunnel as her attacker collapsed. Logan glanced at her, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. Not bad. I had a good teacher, she replied, gripping the pipe tighter. The remaining scavengers hesitated, their bravado fading as they realized they were outmatched. Logan stepped forward, his blade glinting in the faint light. Leave, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. They fled, their curses fading into the distance. A clue in the dark. As the adrenaline faded, Lyra sank to the ground, her hands trembling. Logan crouched beside her, his expression softening. You okay? He asked. She nodded, though her voice was shaky. I didn't know it could get this dangerous. It always does, Logan said, offering her a hand. But we're not done yet. They continued deeper into the tunnels, their path lit only by Logan's flickering flashlight. The air grew colder, the hum of machinery giving way to an eerie silence. Finally, they reached a rusted door with a faded symbol etched into its surface, the same logo they'd seen on the drone, GeneCorp. Logan's jaw tightened. Looks like we found their hideout. He examined the door's control panel, a crude but effective lock designed to keep intruders out. Pulling a small device from his coat, Logan began bypassing the system. Lyra stood guard, her senses on high alert. Do you think Illyra is in there? Logan didn't look up. Only one way to find out. The lock clicked, and the door slid open with a groan, revealing a dimly lit corridor lined with holding cells. The faint sound of muffled cries echoed through the air, sending a chill down Lyra's spine. The first glimpse of truth. They moved cautiously, peering into each cell. Most were empty, but some contained figures huddled in the shadows, children of various species, their eyes wide with fear. Lyra's heart broke as she recognized one of them. Illyra, she cried, rushing to a cell where a small green-skinned girl sat, clutching her knees. The girl looked up, her eyes lighting with recognition. Mother. Lyra reached through the bars, tears streaming down her face. We're here, Illyra. We're going to get you out. Logan worked quickly, hacking the cell's lock. As the door slid open, Illyra ran into her mother's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. We need to move, Logan said, his tone urgent. They'll know we're here soon. But as they turned to leave, a voice echoed through the corridor. "You've gone too far, Kane." Logan froze, his grip tightening on his weapon. From the shadows stepped a figure clad in sleek armor, his face obscured by a visor. "Who are you?" Lyra demanded, shielding Illyra. The man chuckled. "Just someone who cleans up messes like you." Logan stepped forward, his jaw set. "If you're here to stop me, you'll need more than a fancy suit." The figure raised a sleek weapon, its energy core humming ominously. "Oh, I've got plenty more. Let's see if you're as good as they say." A deadly game in the depths. The corridor was deathly silent, save for the faint hum of the armored figure's weapon. Logan stood motionless, his sharp eyes scanning for any opening, while Lyra clutched Illyra tightly, her heart pounding. "You've got one chance to leave," Logan said, his voice calm but laced with danger. "Take it." The armored man tilted his head slightly, as if amused. "And miss the fun?" "Not a chance." The first shot came fast, too fast for most to react, but Logan was already in motion, diving to the side and pulling Lyra and Illyra down with him. The blast scorched the air where they'd just been, leaving a charred mark on the wall. "Run!" Logan barked, shoving Lyra toward the far end of the corridor. Lyra hesitated, her eyes wide with fear. "What about you?" "Don't argue." Logan snapped, drawing his sidearm and firing off 2 quick shots to cover their escape. The hunter and the hunted. Lyra ran, clutching Illyra's hand as the child struggled to keep up. The corridors twisted and turned, the dim lights casting eerie shadows that danced like specters. Behind them, the sounds of the fight echoed, blasts, grunts, and the sharp clang of metal against metal. "Where are we going?" Illyra asked, her voice trembling. "To safety," Lyra replied, though she wasn't sure where that was. As they rounded a corner, they nearly collided with a sleek robot patrol. Its single red eye swiveled toward them, and Lyra froze. "Unauthorized presence detected," the robot intoned, raising a built-in weapon. Before it could fire, a small energy blast struck its sensor, disabling it. Lyra turned to see Logan sprinting toward them, his coat singed but his eyes blazing with determination. "Keep moving," he shouted, firing at another patrol unit that emerged behind him. Trapped and cornered. The group barreled into a storage room, slamming the heavy door shut behind them. Logan jammed a nearby pipe into the handle, buying them precious seconds. "We can't stay here," Lyra said, her voice shaking. "No kidding," Logan replied, reloading his weapon. "But we need a plan." The room was filled with crates bearing the Gene Corp logo. Logan quickly pried one open, revealing a cache of experimental weapons and devices. He whistled low. "These guys are more loaded than I thought." Lyra's eyes narrowed as she examined a strange device with glowing circuits. "What is this?" "Doesn't matter," Logan said, grabbing what looked like a pulse grenade. "If it explodes, it's useful." Illyra tugged at her mother's sleeve. "I think I can help." Both adults turned to the young girl, who was holding a sleek device that looked like a tablet. "I've seen this before," Illyra said, her voice steadier than expected. "It's a control module for their systems. If I can access it, I might be able to open a way out." Logan raised an eyebrow. "Kid, you sure about this?" Illyra nodded, her small hands already working the device. "I'm sure." The pursuer strikes. The door shuddered as something heavy slammed against it. Logan glanced at Lyra. "Buy her time. I'll handle this." Lyra's gaze was filled with worry, but she nodded. "Be careful." Logan pulled the pipe from the handle and stepped into the corridor, meeting the armored man head-on. The mercenary's visor reflected the faint glow of the emergency lights, giving him an almost spectral appearance. "You're persistent," Logan said, circling slowly. "It's a job," the man replied, his voice metallic through the helmet. "Nothing personal." Logan smirked. Funny. I'm about to make it very personal. The fight was brutal, blades clashed, energy blasts scorched the walls, and the sound of gritted teeth filled the air. Logan fought with precision, his movements calculated and efficient, but the mercenary's advanced suit gave him the edge in strength and speed. Escape amid the chaos. Inside the storage room, Illyra's fingers flew over the control module. I've almost got it, she said, her voice tinged with urgency. The door's control panel blinked, and a hidden hatch slid open on the far wall. Lyra grabbed her daughter's hand. Let's go. They rushed into the hatch, emerging in a maintenance shaft that stretched into darkness. Lyra paused, glancing back toward the sound of the fight. Come on, Logan, she whispered. A price paid. Logan dodged a heavy punch that cracked the wall beside him, retaliating with a quick jab of his blade that sliced into the mercenary's armor. Sparks flew, but the man barely flinched. You're good, the mercenary said, raising his weapon. But not good enough. Before he could fire, Logan hurled the pulse grenade he'd taken from the crate. It detonated with a burst of energy, shorting out the mercenary's suit and sending him crashing to the ground. Logan didn't wait to see if he'd stay down. He turned and sprinted toward the hatch, his boots echoing against the metal floor. A brief reprieve. Logan caught up with Lyra and Illyra in the maintenance shaft. He was breathing hard, his coat torn and his knuckles bloody, but he managed a smirk. Miss me? He asked. Lyra let out a shaky laugh, relief washing over her. You're insane. Only on bad days, Logan replied, glancing at Illyra. Nice work, kid. You saved us. Illyra beamed, her fear momentarily forgotten. Where does this lead? Lyra asked, her voice steadying. Logan checked the map on his handheld device. There's a safe house about a mile from here. We can regroup and figure out our next move. As they moved through the shaft, Logan couldn't shake the feeling that the mercenary wasn't done with them yet. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. A hidden sanctuary and a deadly betrayal. The maintenance shaft opened into a sprawling, abandoned industrial zone beneath Nexus Prime. Massive gears and rusted pipes surrounded them, remnants of a bygone era. The air was damp and carried a metallic tang that stung Lyra's nostrils. Logan stepped out first, scanning their surroundings with the practiced eye of someone who had survived too many ambushes. This way, he said, motioning for Lyra and Illyra to follow. Lyra carried Illyra, who was too exhausted to walk, her small arms wrapped tightly around her mother's neck. Despite the grim surroundings, Illyra's voice broke the silence. Are we safe now? She asked softly. For now, Logan replied, though his grip tightened on his weapon. The safe house isn't far. Just a little further. The safe house revealed. The group arrived at an inconspicuous metal door built into the side of a dilapidated structure. Logan pressed his hand to a hidden scanner, and the door hissed open, revealing a dimly lit room filled with old-world technology. The safe house was sparse but functional, a table littered with maps and devices, a few cots along the walls, and a weapons locker in the corner. Logan quickly secured the door behind them and activated a series of counter-surveillance systems. It's not much, but it'll keep us off the grid, he said, dropping his gear onto the table. Lyra laid Illyra on one of the cots, brushing her hair gently. Thank you, she said, her voice filled with genuine gratitude. Logan nodded, his expression softening briefly before he turned back to the table. We need to figure out our next move. That mercenary won't stop until he finishes the job, and we're not dealing with amateurs here. Gene Corp wants Illyra for a reason. The puzzle deepens. Illyra sat up, her curiosity overcoming her fatigue. They're after my research, she said quietly. Logan and Lyra exchanged a glance. What do you mean, sweetheart? Lyra asked gently. I heard them talking, Illyra said, her voice trembling. They said I'm special because of what I can do. They want me to finish my project. Logan frowned. What kind of project? It's a biogenetic sequencing algorithm, Ilera explained, her words tumbling out in a rush. It can rewrite DNA to fix genetic disorders, but they want to use it for something else. To enhance people, to make them stronger. Lyra's face paled. And they think you can do it? Ilera nodded. They said I'm the key. Logan leaned back, running a hand through his hair. So they're not just abducting kids. They're collecting geniuses to build a weaponized future. An unexpected visitor. A sudden knock on the door froze them all in place. Logan silently motioned for Lyra to take Ilera to the back of the room while he drew his weapon. Who's there? Logan called out. A muffled voice answered. It's Voss. Let me in. Lyra's eyes widened. The doctor from the academy? Logan hesitated, then opened the door just enough to let Dr. Voss slip inside. She was drenched, her face pale and her movements jittery. They're everywhere, she gasped. I barely escaped. Logan shut the door behind her, his eyes narrowing. How did you find us? I followed the maintenance logs, Voss replied, collapsing into a chair. I knew you'd come this way. I had to warn you. Warn us about what? Lyra asked, her tone suspicious. Gene Corp isn't just after Ilera, Voss said, her voice trembling. They're after all of us now. They know you've uncovered too much, and they won't stop until you're silenced. The betrayal unfolds. As Voss spoke, Logan's sharp eyes caught the faint glint of a tracking device tucked into the seam of her coat. His stomach sank. Take off your coat, he said abruptly. Voss blinked, confused. What? Why? Now, Logan growled, his tone leaving no room for argument. Hesitantly, Voss removed her coat. Logan grabbed it and turned it over, exposing the blinking tracker embedded in the lining. You led them right to us, he said coldly. Voss's face crumbled. I didn't know. They must have planted it on me when I left the academy. We don't have time to argue, Lyra interjected, her voice rising with urgency. If they're coming, we need to move. A desperate escape. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed outside the safe house, growing louder with every passing second. Logan threw the tracker into a metal crate and slammed it shut. That'll buy us a few minutes, he said, grabbing weapons from the locker. But we're leaving. Now. He handed a small pistol to Lyra, who hesitated before taking it. Do you know how to use this? I'll figure it out, she said, determination hardening her features. Ilera clung to her mother as they followed Logan through a concealed exit. The tunnels beyond were narrower and more treacherous, forcing them to move carefully. Behind them, the safe house erupted in chaos as Genecorp's forces breached the door. Explosions rocked the tunnels, sending dust and debris raining down. This way! Logan shouted, leading them toward an underground tram platform long abandoned by the city. A moment of resolve. They reached the platform just as the pursuing forces closed in. Logan stopped, turning to face the tunnel they'd just exited. Get on the tram, he said firmly. Lyra's eyes widened. What are you doing? Buying you time, Logan replied, his voice steady. No, Lyra protested, grabbing his arm. We're in this together. Logan hesitated, his hardened gaze softening as he looked at her and Ilera. Go. Protect her. I'll catch up. Before Lyra could argue further, Logan pushed her toward the tram. Reluctantly, she climbed aboard, holding Ilera tightly as the vehicle powered up. As the tram began to move, Lyra watched Logan disappear into the shadows, her heart heavy with fear and gratitude. Into the lion's den. The tram rattled along rusted tracks, its hum echoing through the abandoned underground tunnels. Lyra sat with Ilera cradled in her arms, her eyes fixed on the darkened passage ahead. Her heart was a storm of emotions, fear, guilt, and an aching worry for Logan. Will he be okay? Ilara's small voice broke the silence. Lyra forced a smile, brushing a strand of silver hair from her daughter's face. Logan's tough. He'll find us. But deep down, she wasn't so sure. The destination unknown. The tram screeched to a halt at a decrepit station, its platform overgrown with strange bioluminescent fungi that glowed faintly in the dark. Lyra helped Ilara step off, scanning their surroundings for signs of danger. What is this place? Ilara whispered, clutching her mother's hand tightly. It used to be part of the city's energy grid, Lyra replied, her voice hushed. But it's been abandoned for decades. The faint buzz of static interrupted her thoughts. She turned to see a small console on the wall flickering to life. A distorted voice crackled through. Lyra, if you can hear this, stay put. I'm coming. Relief washed over her. Logan, she murmured, pressing her hand against the console. We're here. Please hurry. But the static returned before she could hear his reply. Ilara's revelation. As they waited, Ilara moved toward the edge of the platform, her eyes drawn to the faint glow of a strange device embedded in the wall. What are you doing? Lyra asked, rushing to her daughter's side. It's a power module, Ilara said, her voice filled with wonder. I think I can activate it. Ilara, no. We don't know what it does. But Ilara's small hands were already at work, her prodigious mind racing. The module hummed to life, its circuits lighting up in cascading patterns. Lyra's protest faded as the platform suddenly illuminated, revealing a hidden control room beneath them. What is this? Lyra asked, her voice trembling. I think it's connected to GeneCorp, Ilara said, her fingers moving across the glowing interface. It's a monitoring station. They've been watching the entire sector from here. Lyra's breath caught as screens around the room blinked on, displaying feeds of schools, homes, and even the academy. Ilara's face paled as she pointed to one of the screens. Mom, that's us. A dangerous revelation. Lyra's stomach twisted as she watched the feed. The tram station, the tunnels, they'd been under surveillance the entire time. They know we're here, she whispered, grabbing Ilara and pulling her toward the exit. We have to leave now. But as they turned to flee, a low, mechanical growl echoed through the chamber. From the shadows emerged a sleek, quadrupedal machine, its glowing red eyes locked onto them. Target acquired, it intoned, its voice cold and robotic. Lyra pushed Ilara behind her, raising the small pistol Logan had given her. The machine lunged, its metallic limbs moving with terrifying speed. A mother's resolve. Lyra fired, the energy blast striking the machine's leg and sending it skidding across the floor. It recovered almost instantly, its movements fluid and predatory. Run! Lyra shouted, aiming again. Ilara hesitated, tears streaming down her face. I won't leave you. Go! Lyra screamed, her voice breaking. Find Logan. Ilara finally obeyed, sprinting toward the exit as Lyra faced the machine alone. She fired again, but the weapon's charge was low, and the blasts barely slowed it down. The machine pounced, its claws slashing through the air. Lyra ducked and rolled, narrowly avoiding the attack. Her heart pounded as she searched for anything she could use to fight back. The unexpected savior. Just as the machine closed in for the kill, a deafening roar echoed through the chamber. Logan burst onto the platform, his coat torn and a makeshift weapon in his hand. Miss me, he shouted, slamming a salvaged energy rod into the machine's core. The machine convulsed, its red eyes dimming before it collapsed in a heap of sparking metal. Lyra stared at him, her breath ragged. You always show up at the last second. Wouldn't want to ruin my reputation, Logan replied, helping her to her feet. Where's Ilara? She ran to find you, Lyra said, her voice thick with relief. We need to catch up to her. The final path. Together, they raced through the tunnels, their footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. Logan's sharp instincts and Lyra's unwavering determination kept them moving despite the growing sense of dread. They found Illyra near another console, her small frame illuminated by its glow. She turned, her face lighting up with relief. "Logan," she cried, running to him. He crouched down, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You did good, kid. But we're not out of this yet." As they regrouped, the sound of approaching forces echoed in the distance. Logan's jaw tightened. "This ends now," he said, his voice grim. "We take the fight to them." Lyra nodded, her eyes filled with resolve. "For Illyra. For all the children they've taken." Logan glanced at the glowing map on the console, a small grin forming on his face. "And I think I know just how to do it." The Reckoning. The tunnels narrowed as Logan, Lyra, and Illyra moved toward the heart of the Gene Corp facility. The air grew colder, and the faint hum of machinery became a deafening roar as they approached. Logan held his weapon steady, his eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of danger. "This is it," he said, pointing to a massive steel door ahead. It was emblazoned with the Gene Corp logo and surrounded by intricate locking mechanisms. "Behind that door is where they're keeping everything, data, experiments, and answers." Lyra tightened her grip on Illyra's hand. "How do we get in?" Logan smirked, holding up the salvaged control module Illyra had activated earlier. "With a little help from our resident genius." Illyra stepped forward, her small hands moving deftly across the module's interface. Sparks flew as the locks disengaged one by one, the door groaning as it slid open. "What's the plan once we're inside?" Lyra asked, her voice low. "Disrupt everything," Logan said. "We expose their operation and make sure they can't hurt anyone else." The heart of the beast. The room beyond the door was massive, filled with towering servers, glowing containment pods, and scientists bustling about in sterile suits. At the center stood a holographic display projecting a map of the galaxy, with numerous red markers scattered across it. "They've been tracking us," Lyra whispered, her eyes widening as she recognized familiar locations. "Not just us," Logan said grimly. "They've been abducting children from all over the sector." Illyra pointed to the containment pods. "There are more kids in there." Logan nodded. "We'll get them out. But first, we shut this place down." The Resistance. As Logan and Lyra moved toward the control center, alarms blared, and Gene Corp security forces stormed into the room. The scientists scattered, leaving the trio surrounded by heavily armed guards. "Stay behind me," Logan said, stepping forward with his weapon raised. The first wave of guards charged, their energy blasts lighting up the room. Logan's movements were precise and efficient, his shots finding their marks. Lyra, armed with her salvaged pistol, provided cover fire, her determination outweighing her fear. Illyra ducked behind a console, her quick thinking guiding her hands as she hacked into the system. "I can override the lockdown," she shouted. "Hurry, kid!" Logan yelled, taking out another guard. The turning tide. Just as the battle seemed to turn in their favor, the armored mercenary from before stepped into the room, his visor glowing ominously. "You're persistent," Logan muttered, his grip tightening on his weapon. The mercenary raised his weapon. "And you're out of time." The two clashed, their fight a brutal dance of speed and strength. Logan's resourcefulness kept him in the game, but the mercenary's advanced suit gave him the upper hand. Meanwhile, Lyra protected Illyra as she worked feverishly on the console. "I've almost got it." Illyra cried, sweat dripping down her face. Illyra's gamble. With a triumphant beep, the console lit up, and the containment pods began to release their captives. Children of various species stumbled out, their eyes wide with confusion and fear. "You did it." Lyra exclaimed, pulling Illyra into a tight embrace. But their relief was short-lived. The mercenary had Logan pinned, his weapon poised for a killing blow. No! Lyra screamed, grabbing a nearby energy rod and charging at the mercenary. Her strike hit the exposed joint of his suit, sending a surge of electricity through him. He staggered, giving Logan the opening he needed to deliver a decisive blow. The final blow. As the mercenary collapsed, sparks flying from his damaged suit, Logan turned to the console. Illyra, can you overload the system? The girl nodded, her fingers flying across the controls. It'll take everything offline, but we need to leave, fast. Do it, Logan said. Alarms blared as the facility began to shut down. Lights flickered, and containment pods cracked open, releasing more captives. The trio guided the children toward an emergency exit, the room shaking as the facility began to self-destruct. A new beginning. They emerged into the open air, the cold night sky of Nexus Prime dotted with stars. Behind them, the Gene Corp facility erupted in a massive explosion, its secrets buried beneath rubble and fire. Logan, Lyra, and Illyra stood amidst the freed children, their faces lit by the glow of the destruction. We did it, Lyra said softly, tears streaming down her face. Logan nodded, his expression tired but satisfied. Yeah. We did. What happens now? Illyra asked, looking up at them. Logan placed a hand on her shoulder. Now, we make sure they can never do this again. As the sounds of approaching rescue vehicles filled the air, Lyra looked at Logan, her gratitude unspoken but deeply felt. You're staying, aren't you? She asked. Logan smirked. Somebody's gotta keep you two out of trouble.